So Saul and John, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Great to be here. It's always great to be at these. I went to school down the road. How many of you were on the conference call that we did? Any of you? A couple weeks ago? So this is kind of the same stuff, huh? The webinar.
Oh, okay.
The webinar. So we're going to talk about the same kind of stuff. And my idea is to kind of give you some things to think about, to talk about as you go into your planning. So I start with this, and planning for the future, it's strategy, and then it's tactics. And so what kind of strategy with all the changing that's taking place in the industry? And I graduated from the Naval Academy in 1972, right down the road. And so I started subscribing to this magazine, Proceedings, back in the early 70s. And I still get it every month. And when this one came out a while back, it kind of reminded me of the real estate industry. And it's the aircraft carrier, and it asks, it doesn't ask, it says it's too big to sink. And so we kind of think about the real estate industry, think about all the things that are going on, and we think about how big it is, how fragmented it is, and all the things that are going on. And my question is it too big to sink? And I'm not sure at this point in time. And I don't kind of find out where you're at on that. So you need to get a hold of us. We talked about it. We have a lot of resources out there, so consider us your resource. We answer all phone calls, return all email, return all texts. We're everywhere online, and if we can help you in any way, get you any information that you need to know, then that's great. And I have a number of email addresses. They all go to one spot. And of course, I got my .realtor one. I got Saul at bettercallsaul.realtor. And we know that NAR's got another domain out there, .realestate, so we want to look at that. That's part of the future as well. So we're now experiencing, and we can see it every day, the manifestations of the last 25 years with regard to technology, right? Rapid technology innovation. Just about every day something different is taking place. We have human engagement online like we never had before. Initially, it was very difficult to get people to engage, and now it's very simple. People are engaging all the time, and sometimes they engage over the craziest stuff. We find out we put good information out there, there's very little engagement. We say, what's your favorite color? And you get a lot of engagement. So we know it's still early in the evolution of engagement on the internet today. There are a lot of generational differences that we have to deal with and have to play too. There are new concepts of ownership, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that, but we've always dealt with new concepts of ownership in real estate. Nothing new. Homes are now recognized as an asset class. We always thought of them as an asset class, but Wall Street thinks of them as an asset class, and that brings a lot more competition into the marketplace. How will that affect you? I'm not sure, but we'll kind of find out over time. And then you heard this big data. You hear it all the time, big data. I heard a quote last week. The guy said, you have to have a lot of data for it to be big data, because if you don't have a lot of data, it's just data. But if you got big data, today we have the computing power to kind of work ourselves through this. And so that makes a big difference. A lot of computing power and big data. So these are consumer preferences. I've been talking about these consumer preferences for at least, John, how long? At least the last 25 years, and nothing's changed. This is what people want. So as you look at your business, you look at your practice, you look at your website, of all the things that you do, can you deliver these things? Because this is what your competition is trying to deliver, right? Speed, convenience, choice, value added, quality, service, discounts, and information. So as you look at your outreach to people and your business, are you providing these types of things? Because somebody is going to. Consumer expectations. So we go, mass production was a big thing, but today we've got mass customization. And so that's what people want, and that's what people are getting. No longer is it one size fits all. Everybody can have things customized to them. Innovation. I heard this a couple weeks ago, right? Innovation, we hear about innovation all the time. We hear about disruption all the time, and it's two sides to the same coin. Change. And so when we talk about change, for one person that change is disruption. For another person that change is innovation. So they go hand in hand. The real estate industry is always in a state of flux. So we hear this today, and people try to scare us with the change. I like to scare you with some of the change too. But the fact is, the real estate business is always changing. It's always been changing. I got my sales license in '75. I got my broker's license in 1977. I was president of my board of realtors in San Diego in 1993. And it's been changing as long as I've been around it. So when people tell me the real estate industry is changing, I have to ask what's new. It's always been changing. But can you adapt to it? Also, when you see a lot of this information today, you get it out of context. And so it needs to be in context, right? Text without context is pretext. And so let's set the context up, put the information in the context so we can understand it. Now, for the last think about what's happened over the last couple of years. 25 years ago, I know a lot of you remember that. 25 years ago, we really didn't have to deal with the internet very much. And the World Wide Web, right? Netscape didn't go public till something like August 9th, 1995. And so there was no web. The internet for most, some of us were on the internet, but not most people. And then we got the iPhone 12 years ago, and the whole world has changed since we got the iPhone. And we used to say that technology will be ubiquitous. That was the word we used like 30 years ago. It's got to be ubiquitous. Nobody even knew what that meant. And we'd always get asked, what do you mean? Well, today, like it's really, I didn't even know what I meant back then, but now I know. When I look at it now, I can really see this. Everybody's got it. Everybody's there all the time. It affects our lives. But we didn't have that iPhone 12 years ago. And so there is no more science fiction. I try to think of things that like are beyond possibility. And it's very difficult. There is no more science fiction. Anything that anybody can think of, somebody figures out a way to build it or create it. So your wildest dream isn't wild enough. As you start to think about strategic planning, you start to think about the future and creating a plan for that dream, because it's not too far out. Matter of fact, some of the things that are happening today, if we'd have said them 20 years ago, people would say that'll never happen. That'll never take place. No way. So let's talk a little bit about the change in real estate. I'll go over this as fast as I can. You've been around this a long time. It's always been changing. After World War II, big changes after World War II, right? We got the VA bill. We got the American dream. What happened then is we got solidification of the power of local brokers. We got a lot of big local brokers at the time. That was great. We didn't have franchises. We got these big locals. In my market, one of my real estate heroes, a guy named Art Leach. He was an NAR president. He had 16 offices in San Diego, and he was on all the bus benches, and his colors were green and gold, and he was like the guy. And in every city you could go to, you just find some dominant major brokers in the marketplace, just any market you travel to. And then we got this franchise boom in 1969, 1970, 1971, 1972. A lot of people didn't believe that franchises would take off. Art Leach didn't. He thought, no way that's going to take off. But then we got all these franchises, right? So you know all the franchises that jumped into the marketplace. And then as we kind of go through that timeline, we got this aggregation of financial services. Anybody remember that era? Right? And so that was a big deal. And the big talk was one-stop shop. Remember that? Now they're talking, what's the new thing today? One-stop shop. It's the same stuff. Right? So we had 1981, Sears purchased Dean Witter. I thought that was real interesting for Sears to buy a brokerage firm. And Keller Williams got started. I got to kind of throw that in. That was kind of a different angle. And then 1985, I remember when Metropolitan Life bought Century 21, I thought, what's an insurance company doing? Buying a real estate company? But it was this consolidation, one-stop shop. H&R Block went into Sears stores. That gave me a great idea. I thought, this is great because people don't need to buy real estate from me but once every 5 to 8 years, but people need their taxes done every year. And so also when you do people's taxes, you get to see all their secrets. Right? People, it's true, people will tell you things they won't tell their spouse. Right? They have a husband and wife sitting in tax preparation, they get their taxes done, and the husband would say something and kind of look over it, right? Like secret stuff that they, right? So being a tax preparer, you get a lot of inside scoop. I also look at the Schedule E, and I'd know, where they were on depreciation on their property. I'd also know how much money they had in the bank, how much interest they were earning. I could work backwards and figure out how much cash they had. And so the tax business gives you a snapshot into somebody's life. And so Sears knew that. They brought these H&R Blocks into their stores. In 1987, and things slowed down for a bit, right? And the stock market crashed. Now remember, Merrill Lynch got into real estate too. And they couldn't have, so we think it's new today that we've got all these financial services and Wall Street's getting into real estate. They've done this before. And so they got into it. Merrill Lynch, I remember my marketplace in San Diego had a lot of Merrill Lynch offices. And then Merrill Lynch couldn't cut it. And so they had to sell it. And they sold it. And now think about this number, $300 million. That's a substantial number even today. When we look at the money entering the real estate industry today, and it's going to be about, what, $1 billion? Well, it's $1 billion for the first quarter of this year. So there's all this money flooding into the real estate space. Well, that was a good, healthy amount of money back then. So people are willing to spend money to get into real estate. 450 offices, 18,000 agents, $300 million. And you remember this, right? And this was before I was president of my board in '93. The desk copy, right? You only bought a couple of those comp books. A couple people that had money bought the comp books, and everybody got the MLS book. But that was we all used books. And then we got those dumb terminals, and we got the heat kind of paper, and right, we all lived through that. And we did live through it. And then this is interesting because NAR in the early 90s did studies. And a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people blame NAR for not seeing what was happening. And actually NAR knew exactly what was happening. And NAR went out and did these white papers. You remember this? EDS and Arthur Young and Gallup and a presidential advisory group to tell us what's going on. And I still have all these if you're interested in them. They're all scanned. I can send them to you. I kept everything. And then Billy Cheap, president of the National Association in 1993, made that great speech. He said, the lion's coming over the hill and realtors like a bunch of chihuahuas arguing over the bone. And I don't know if you read through that speech, but at the end he says, fellow realtors, let's become the lion. And so we were ready to take on the world back in 1993, technologically. So I say NAR was right. NAR got this right. And RIN was funded, a wholly owned subsidiary of NAR, $13 million bucks. Perfect. We're on our way. But at the time, there were only 20 million users on the web. 20 million users. Look at the way that the economics work. Web traffic, eyeballs, ad placement, revenues. How does it work today? Web traffic, eyeballs, ad placement, revenues. Works the same way. March 4th, we had this kickoff of RIN. Anybody remember that? Realtors, that was the 13 million bucks, Realtors Information Network. They kind of plucked me out of nowhere and said, can you help us figure out how we're going to use technology in the real estate business? And so I got to go to that event and speak at that event. Afterwards, Belton Jennings came up to me and says, looks like you already had all the answers and then you made up the questions. So did anybody remember the RIN Network desktop? I know you remember floppies. Right? This is one of three. I got the first, I was a beta tester and it was 16 discs. They'll load these 16 discs into the computer. And we had a Booz Allen Hamilton with big company. So NAR was right about this. And they created what we refer to as a proprietary desktop. Privacy. Right? Private. Oh, anybody can know, not anybody. Privacy. Now here was the problem. It was $8 a minute. Yeah. So my comment was, what realtor do you know is going to pay $8 a minute? So, but this is what it looked like if you logged in. Now, John Riley, our favorite button was Discuss. It later became Real Talk. So we created the online community that went under that button. And we had about 200 people, huh, Dorna, that were participating in these conversations with us online inside this proprietary network. Discuss became Real Talk. And then remember geodata. This is where the bulk of the money was spent. It was spent on putting together databases of information to make it easy for realtors, so realtors would have information before the consumers had the information. Kind of makes sense. That's what people are talking about today. We were talking about it in 1993. So geodata, great button. Now if you look, this is the original color acetate overhead from the presentations that I did back then. But take a look at it. Does it look familiar? Broker agent signs into RIN, and what do they get access to? Crime, environment, thematic, tax. But isn't this what we're doing today? Isn't this what our MLSs provide today? The idea back then was NAR is going to do this. We're going to put it in a proprietary network. We're going to control what goes on. We're going to keep the realtor in the center of the real estate transaction. That was the theme. Now, where Realtor.com came from, people don't know this, but before listings got on the internet, first of all, listings on the internet was public display of listings. That was something that we had to convince the world, the realtor world, that this was a good idea. We knew it would happen anyway. So where did we go? We went to these kiosks in San Diego. So a guy named Richard Jansen was in San Diego, then I was in San Diego, and Richard had put up these kiosks in 50 Long's drugstores. They all turned into CVS's over time. But he put these kiosks in these Long's drug, and people could go in and they could look for real estate, and he sold profiles to realtors that could be on these kiosks. Now the first thing that comes to my mind is, do people who go to the drugstore really want to buy real estate? And so it didn't work. I was right. People who went to the drugstore really weren't interested in buying real estate, but they would like to look at stuff, and you had to put in your name, and so there were a lot of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and not very valuable information. But this is kind of interesting. This was this kiosk that says Home Select Kiosk, the automated 7-minute home finder. 7 minutes. Would you wait 7 minutes for a search? 7 minutes didn't seem like there was that much time. It was so good that they put it on the marketing materials. 7 minutes. And then home ads. Now look at this right across. This is inside the proprietary network. If they're going to put these things out on the internet, how are people going to see it? Well, there's this thing called Netscape. It's like a browser. You know, we're going to use that, and people are going to be able to click on that, and they're going to be able to go out, and they're going to be able to find the listings that we somehow put up there. What do we call it? We call it home ads. I said I didn't like home ads. I like real property ads. And so that's what it got named eventually, because I was the guy that had to write all the marketing pieces. So it was home ads, and it was owned by REN. And so Realtor.com, I used to say this, that REN's got two sides. It's got a public side, it's got a private side. The private side is the REN Network desktop. It's a proprietary network. The public side is Realtor.com, all owned by the National Association of Realtors. Now the idea was exclusivity. So remember, only 20 million people on the web. And so we weren't even sure that the web would take off. Because 20 million, we thought that it would, but 20 million, not a critical mass. And so 20 million people, we said, here's what we got to do. We got to put all the listings in one spot, kind of like the Super Bowl. We'll put it on one channel. And then everybody will learn that all the listing information is on one channel. And if we can get everybody going to that one channel, then they can sell advertising and support it. And it will be really valuable, you know, like $2 million for 30 seconds for the Super Bowl. Right? So we thought this was the idea, exclusivity. Exclusivity. And that's what it looked like. Kind of primitive by today's standards. So if you go back to that, you look at that exclusivity, here's what happened. If you wanted to put your, Austin was the first association to go up on Realtor.com. If you wanted your listings on Realtor.com, we started with a model of $2 per listing per month. As we started to go out and sign up MLSs, we decided we could do it for $1 per listing per month. We launched Realtor.com and REN at the convention in Atlanta, and it was in '96, the convention in Atlanta, and at that convention, Microsoft, which owned a website called Home Advisor, not today's Home Advisor, they owned a website called Home Advisor, and they came out free. Free. And what happened is they drove the price to zero. And so now all of a sudden we've got this business model to run REN and to run Realtor.com based on $1 a listing a month, and we just went to free. And so the board of directors kind of lost their courage. And they said, we can't afford this. We need to sell this thing. We've already spent $13 million. Now, there was also some issues that we had with the president, and I can have conversations with you about that. As a matter of fact, that's when we hired Bob Goldberg. Anybody know Bob Goldberg? So we hired Bob Goldberg. When we hired Bob Goldberg, they hired Bob Goldberg after me. Bob Goldberg got assigned to me. They said, who do I go to find out what's going on? They assigned him to me. So I had the great opportunity to work with Bob initially on all of this stuff, and but we couldn't talk him out of it. And this was what was taking place. This was a book came out by Bill Gates. Anybody read this book? It was really ahead of its time. It had a CD in the back. And you could take the CD out, had all of the information, had the book was on the CD. And he says, and this is 1996, he says, 1995, 96, says, put your house on the market. You'll be able to describe it fully, including photographs, video, floor plans, tax records, utility and repair bills, even a little mood music. The chances that a potential buyer for your house will see your ad are improved because the information highway will make it easy for people to look up. 1995, Bill Gates is saying this. And then he says the whole system of real estate agencies and commissions may be changed by the principals having direct access to so much information. Bill Gates, 1995. You know who was working for him back then? Rich Barton. You know what Rich Barton founded? Zillow. And Glassdoor. And Expedia first, yeah. Right? So this guy really understood what was going on, was in that, right, in the Microsoft environment, knew all of this, created Zillow. We don't need to read that. So this was an original slide. Actually, on my computer, I hid it, and I didn't hide it here. It's just more. I can send it to you if you want it. So this was an original slide. You don't like the color? Back then I was kind of new using PowerPoint. And so I thought this was a great color for my slide. I said, you had to convince realtors, you're going to advertise on the internet. And they say, well, what's the internet? Really? People didn't know. And this is what how we explained it. We said it's an inexpensive new medium. And it's accessible by 20 million users. Because remember that slide before, right? And it exists now. It's already here, and it's the wave of the future. It's coming. Because I'm trying to convince realtors this is a very important thing. They say, well, how does it exist? Well, there were 4,000 real estate sites at the time. You ever Google real estate today? Millions. But there were 4,000 then, and each only offered a few listings. And we thought that could be detrimental to the real estate effort because consumers would go to a place, they'd find only 2 or 3 listings, they'd say, this isn't any good. I can't find anything. So we thought that there was a problem in only having a few listings in one place. That's why we believed in this exclusivity thing. And it grew over 9 months from a couple hundred to 4,000. So if you're watching this, you say something's going on here. And the people that were sponsoring these websites were newspapers and magazines, national and regional brokers, the ones that got out ahead of this. And then there were these things we call non-traditional real estate organizations. Non-traditional real estate, and you could name them today, right? I would say, why should I be concerned with these non-traditional real estate organizations? Because this will fragment the industry. It's already fragmented. And we're going to fragment it more, and then this continued fragmentation will allow these non-traditional services to get a foothold. And they're not necessarily realtor-friendly. Again, this is from a presentation in 1995. NAR saw this coming. And then we get the first generation of listing portals, and you remember them. And so Realtor.com was #1 for like 10 years. And then Home Seekers, our good friend John Giamo at Home Seekers, are a friendly competitor with us, and Cyber Homes, and Home Advisor, the old Microsoft site, and Homes.com. And that was it. They sold off Realtor.com, and John and I didn't have anything to do. We're real excited about this thing, and it's like, okay, we don't need you guys anymore. When they did that transition, they brought me in. NAR actually put me on the staff for like 3 weeks. I had health insurance and all this stuff for 3 weeks while they were waiting to transition. So John and I said, you know what? Realtors need to learn how to use email. And people find that crazy today. You had to teach people how to use email? Yeah, we did. People didn't know how to do this. And so we created what we called Internet Crusade because we believed that it wasn't going to be easy to go out and teach realtors that this was coming. And so we created a site, we called it Realtown, and we said you got to have content, you got to have context, you got to get people to collaborate, you got to have communication. Now we have 7 C's. That's my Navy background, right? But there were 4 at the time. And then NAR gave us the contract in 2001 to do ePro, so we created the ePro program we saved the ePro program for NAR because they gave it to a vendor. They enrolled 5,000 people. The vendor went bankrupt. Bob Goldberg was running it inside of NAR. He called John and I and he said, how quickly can you guys build a course? We said 6 weeks. 6 weeks. So we put it together. We went out and enrolled 70,000 people in the ePro course from 2001 to 2010. We taught them how to use email. And then during that time, 2005, Realtor.com survived because we got the 2nd generation, but here come these non-traditional real estate people, right? We got the Zillows and we got the Troyas, and Homes.com survived, and the model for monetization became lead generation. Because remember, it's free. So if it's free, you got to figure out a way to pay for it. I like to ask realtors today, if we could go back to Zillow, they put like 3 or 4 people next to your listing, say, if we could go back and you could pay $1 a listing a month and not have your competitors on your listing, would you pay $1 a listing a month? That might be up to 5 now, but still, right? And then in 2008, we created syndication, right? So syndication, I took over a company in January 1st, 2008 called Point 2 Technologies, and they were taking data from realtors realtors were uploading their data to a website, and Point 2 was syndicating this data to some of these new players, Zillow, Troya. And so I took over as CEO and I said, you know what, we got to make sure that it's all the data, it's good data, the best data comes from the MLS, we want the MLS to be the first point of contact, let's try to figure out how to normalize the data. Because you know the problem with data, MLS data, it's all different languages. And this graphic kind of explains what we do at Point 2. We go out, we get the data from these different MLSs, it would look like this. Our developers would make it look like this. And then all of these people can receive that data, you could get exposure, you could pay for advertising. Interesting thing for us at Point 2, we didn't charge for that service. That was free. Now, if you list up today, charges for this, right? You want the listings, you pay for it. That would have been tough to do. Go to an MLS, please give me your data, I'm going to make a lot of money on it. So we stayed away from that, but the people who took it, the non-traditional people, they had no problem with that. The whole purpose was to make money. Then we created this graphic to kind of explain that, how that works. Rich, remember that graphic? Right? Kind of people use this, kind of explains what syndication was. But so we've had all this. We've been through all this change, and we're hearing today that we're changing. No, so what? We've always been changing. But then we hear this time it's different. It's different. It's different this time. The velocity is increased. Things are changing. They're changing fast. Why? Number one, capital in quantity. And I'll give you the numbers in a minute. Capital in quantity. Engagement You know that people are engaging every day. Just go online and watch this and watch the conversations that are taking place, but people are engaging. Engagement gives you an opportunity to build trust and confidence. That's the foundation of the relationship. There are these generational differences with different expectations and preferences that people have. So how do you serve them? Then you got all this innovation coming, and with it the disruption. And then there's this thing called long tail, and if you haven't heard of long tail, it's like you don't have to have a product everybody buys. You just have to have a product somebody buys, and around the world you'll get enough people to keep you in business. And the internet allowed that. And if you haven't read The Long Tail, Chris Anderson, it's a great book, one of the founders of Wired magazine. So these are the things that make it different this time. Now how different, I'm not sure, but these are driving forces today. So people look at real estate, people outside of the real estate industry, they look at the real estate industry, they look at you as a target. Because the commissions are like $80 to $100 billion a year in the real estate industry, and everybody outside the industry, they look at that and they say, I want some of that. I want everybody say, well, you buy this, it's only going to take two commission checks, right? Everybody wants a piece of that commission. And you came up with 6 million sales a year. That's an interesting number, right? 6 million sales a year, approximately year after year after year, 12 million sides a year. What's the traffic on Zillow and all those other sites? 100 million people a month. That tells you right there, most of those are not really leads. To give you an idea, eBay total annual revenue, 9.5 billion worldwide. Real estate industry, 80 to 100 billion in commissions. Lots of money for people to go after. So here's one of the issues with real estate and why real estate didn't move to the next level. All these other industries have been disrupted. A lot of industries have been disrupted. And one of the reasons is that there's liquidity in these others. I mean, you can move product. Real estate's harder to move. And so there's no liquidity. Put your money in real estate, it might take you 30, 60, 90, 120 days, whatever, to get your money out. You got all these hoops you got to jump through. The buyer's got to get the loan. It all takes time and no liquidity. So most purchases require a lot of time. And the real estate industry really has been capital starved, hasn't it? That most of the brokers I know didn't have a lot of money to go out and invest it because they got to run their business. And so the industry was capital starved. And there was no liquidity. And now we've got these new business models because there's a lot of money coming into the business because people want a piece of that $100 billion. Now, you know what else they want? They want all of the information that is going to be gathered underneath the searching that people do for real estate. Because people, when you go out and search for stuff, you're telling people about yourself. And if that can be captured and combined with other things, there's gigantic value in that. So while we talk about these portals and about the listings and about the money they can earn there, believe me, that's the tip of the iceberg. And that really it's the data and the consumer behavioral data that's going to change the world. So new business models to facilitate liquidity in the acquisition and disposition. That's what's happening now. And so here's the capital. This is kind of interesting. Money that's been pumped into the real estate industry. Our friend Stefan gave us this figure. We've been playing around with it for a while. 2015, 9.93 billion. 2016, 1.67. 2017, 5.8. 2018, it dropped a little bit. Actually, to me, that's a lot of drop, but still, it's a lot of money. But look at the first quarter of this year. Right? Compass, how much Compass got? One of the last drills got like 500 million or something. Huge amounts of capital. And one thing I'll say about capital is even if it's invested and not successful, it has the power to change things. And so it doesn't matter. Oh, that's a crazy idea. It'll never be successful. Might not matter. Right? How many of you have seen the Redfin commercials where they, in my market, big time, they talk about 1%, right? No big deal. Talk 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%. Then we had this company called Purple Bricks. They say, don't pay too much commission. Don't pay too much commission. You're a fool if you pay too much commission. You're a fool if you pay too much commisery, they call it, right? And they make it look like you're dumb if you paid money. And so those companies might not be successful. It doesn't matter. What are consumers thinking? What are the expectations that are being set? These are things you have to deal with, or you're going to have to deal with.
Hey.
John Riley wants me to pause.
Take a breath.
It's kind of fun, isn't it?
Technology has not fixed everything.
Not everything.
Okay, now you can go.
Okay, so this, again, I got this slide last week. John and I were at Stefan's event. Capital helps create new giants, right? So these are all the things that have been happening. If you haven't been paying attention to what's going on, right? Compass buys Pacific, they're buying the big. So Compass, big company, in my mind, what they're doing what people I knew years ago did. They're buying market share and they're buying labor. And they're doing a good job of doing it. Are they paying too much? I don't know, because remember, it doesn't matter. It still can have an effect. Redfin, they build this technology. They're one of the top companies. You look at all the numbers, selling as much as anybody else in a short period of time. Then there's this thing called EXP, which John and I kind of like because we kind of like the internet playing around, right? We went inside the EXP site, and the first thing is took us to ride the boat, right? So we got to ride this boat around. Virtual, doing things virtually. People say that'll never work. Might not. They're doing pretty good though, right? They've attracted 17,000 agents, and if you look at their numbers, it's amazing. So I bring these up because these are the forces that are out there. They're a little bit different than the things you had to deal with before. This was a great, this kind of shows you how long it took to build a real estate business to get up to 10 billion in annual sales. So you look at names that you know, and it took them 40 to 60 years. It took, like Wes Foster's his lifetime to get to that number, to get to 10 billion sales. But look at these new companies in the last 5 to 15 years, they hit 10 billion. And so when people say the velocity is changing, it's true, right? The velocity is changing. Things are happening faster. This was a guy who works for Andreessen Horowitz, a VC firm. You got to listen to the VCs sometimes. You got to take it with a grain of salt. The venture capitalists, these are the people that put up a lot of the money. So, money talks. When they put up the money, they're looking at this, and now here's the other thing about these VCs. They want things to happen faster than they probably will happen because they want to make their money and get their money out. So when we start hearing from VCs how fast things are changing, right, they have a reason that they're throwing that at us. So in the future, he says, in the future, you'll buy a house from or sell your house to a big company. No more small companies, big companies, because small companies won't be able to compete because they won't be able to offer a full stack of services. Now, that's not really true if you look at it, because even small companies can get access to those services, and those are the kinds of things you need to be looking at. So that if you look at what these other brokerage firms are doing, if you can't pay for it and do it yourself, you might partner with somebody that'll do that for you. Now, we've been doing that in the industry for years, right? So what's driving change in the real estate industry? This on-demand economy. So people want it all, they want it now, and they want it for nothing. That's how Walt used to describe realtors. Want it all, want it now, want it for nothing. This is what, and you even hear it on the commercials on television now, right? People want it all, they want it now. And everything needs to be free. So we got this on-demand economy. So you've seen some of the applications that people are, I've seen some where you want to see a house if you're a consumer, you just kind of go to an Uber thing and you find the closest realtor and you call them and then they come open the door for you. On-demand economy, technology, capital, and then the rising cost of real estate. I often think of who can afford to buy a house anymore where I live. Right? I don't think I'd want to try to buy the house I live in now. And so how do people do that? And the prices are going up. And besides that, interest rates are really low. What happens when interest rates go up? And all these houses are up here and the interest rates go up, and what's going to happen then? And so what we're seeing is new uses of the real estate. So just look at the real estate transaction. The real property purchase process takes all of these things. All these things have to take place. This is why it's so hard to bring this together, right? The buyer's credit's got to be checked. The property has to be inspected. They have to have an appraisal. You got to get property insurance. You got to get title insurance. You got to validate and transfer the funds. You got to prepare the documents, and you have to execute. But it takes a while. But now you can do it online, and we're moving to this where this can all happen faster because all these databases are being tied together. So I look at the securities industry. Anybody trade stock online? If you trade stock online, you know that you can have a major transaction and all the paperwork will be done. It'll be done in a second. I go in, I say, I want to buy Apple stock. I say, buy. The next box says, how many shares? The next box says, what stock do you want to buy? Next says, you want to buy it at a particular price or at the market? Then you hit enter. And if you wanted to buy 100 shares of Apple and spend whatever the price is today, 20 grand, like that. The stock is transferred, the money is transferred, kind of like a real estate transaction, right? The money goes to the right place, the ownership documents go to the right place, it all happens in a split second. And people say, well, real estate's different. This will never happen with real estate. You might be right, but I wouldn't bet on it. That's kind of a stock account, right? Buy, quantity, stock, review order, buy or sell. Platforms, you hear the word platform. And so a lot of people kind of got this, what is a platform? The way I look at it is it's a technology that allows people to plug in. And then the data that gets plugged in can be manipulated and can be viewed. And so that's what a platform is, and we see a lot of platform plays. If you go on a convention floor, you talk to people, what you realize is a lot of them, they've just got these technology platforms. And they'll take these API, application programming interfaces, take these APIs, get this data, bring it in, and then you can manipulate it. A lot of platform plays. So what about these new business models? How do you adjust? I've been using this slide for years, right? The kid sets up the lemonade stand, 25 cents, probably $25 a day, and then across the street, freelemonade.com. And all of a sudden, how do you compete? It's free, but they sell your information. So there are new ways to subscribe or to subdivide. So this is what's happening. There's new ways to subdivide property. When we talk about new uses of real estate, we've been looking at new uses of real estate for years. So they call this dynamic yield maximization of an otherwise static asset. So real estate is kind of a static asset. What could you do with it? Sell it? Lease it? Right? A number of things you can do. Borrow money against it. Bundle of rights stuff, right? Certain things that you could do with real estate, but today you can do more. Right? New ways to make money for real estate owners, increasing the value of real property. So what I say is the utility value of real estate is increasing. Remember the four elements of value: demand, utility, scarcity, transferability. Utility, one of the elements of value. How you can use that property. The utility of that's what Airbnb is. You can take a house and make it a hotel. Right? That's a new use. So now we've been doing this for years. I remember I would sit in the 24-hour restaurant in San Diego, and I thought the people that owned the 24-hour restaurant were geniuses because they made money on their real estate 24 hours a day. And there were always people there. Not everybody could be open 24 hours, but that was great. And then in the late 70s, we got condos. That was a new way to subdivide property. Remember, Horizontal Property Act, and we could divide it this way, and we could divide it this way, and now we got California airspace condominiums. Then somebody created timeshare, divide the property up into spaces, and then divide it into segments of time. Right, we've been doing this. We've been creating new uses of real estate for years. Then we get the Airbnb, and then I'll show you, they got roommates now. Go to a website and find roommates. Got equity shares online, got sale leaseback, got co-working spaces. Now something that's important here is that some of these ideas are not new ideas. They're just the technology applied to the same thing we've been doing for years. Sale leaseback. Technology removes the friction. That's what's happening, right? So a lot of they say, well, nobody will ever do that. You got to transfer the document. You got to do this. You got to do, and all these things that take time. No, the technology is taking the friction out of this. And so now you could sell a bedroom in your house like that, or keep the kitchen to yourself, right? So we got these different categories of brokers to deal with now. Modern brokers, right? Like the Compasses of the world. You need to know your competition. What are they doing? What are they up to? What's their vision? What's their mission? Compass didn't have anything on the site about discounts, by the way. Robert Refkin Compass, he says that he wants a national MLS. I look at it, I say, that's a really big bite. That's tough, fragmented, I'm not sure it's a great idea. Less MLSs maybe, these are all separate entities. I don't know, national MLS, I'm not sure. HomeSmart, another one of these players, right? Professional that works for you. EXP, we already talked about EXP. Then we got these modern discount brokers, Redfin. Now they've changed. There is no more discount broker, right? It's full service for less. Full service for less. And then the realtor says, well, that's not really full service. Well, how do you know? Right? Full service for less. Purple Bricks, they actually now reorganized, and we see they had some problems, and I think they pulled out of New Zealand or Australia, New Zealand, and they're reevaluating the U.S., but they're around, they're still out there. This is another one, Rex Homes, tech-focused real estate company, operates outside the MLS. They raised $45 million. Now remember, here's what's happening. All this money's flooding into real estate. Typically 8 out of 10 investments go south, right? And the people that invest the money, they make money on 2 of them, they lose on the other 8. There's a ton of money. Remember how much? $5 billion this quarter? There's a lot of money flowing into real estate. There's going to be a lot of money lost. And there's going to be some money made. But the money lost doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect on the industry. In California, this is where this is set up. Rex charges 70% less than traditional brokers. So here's what's happening. If you think there's downward pressure on commission, I agree. You know why? Everybody's saying it. They're talking about it all the time. Then there are these referral companies. HomeLight, I saw them down on the convention floor. Right? So they'll go out and they'll rate agents. They'll get the information about the productivity of agents, how good they are, ratings, and then they advertise on television. Consumers go there, and then they sell the lead. home life. Again, things you should go look at. That's another site, Effective Agents, like everybody else is not, right? Now, you heard a lot about the iBuyer. So we got this iBuyer thing. And what you have to understand about iBuyers, and you know what that is? That's the companies that are raising a ton of capital to go out and buy houses. Why? Because houses are in demand. Houses are going to go up in value. There might be a downturn at some time, but we know over time real estate and homes are a great investment. I don't know about your market, but my market in San Diego, they're not building houses. They're building condos and apartments. I haven't seen a housing tract in a while. Single-family residences, right? So Wall Street recognizes this. They've got all this money. They want to buy up all these houses. Now we hear the realtors, the doubters, they say, well, wait till the market turns. Wait till the market goes south and they're holding all this inventory, and that's not their play. That's not their play, right? They're not about making all this money. They're not flipping. Well, they might try to do that, some, but they're building portfolio. Now here's the other thing. They say, we'll buy your iBuyer. We'll buy your house. Don't put it on the market. You don't have to go through all the hassles of selling your house. We'll buy it. We'll buy it for 10% less maybe, but we'll buy it. Now that's not for everybody, but might some people be willing to take that to move on to the next thing? So it's long tail. It's not about everybody. It's about a smaller group of people. But here's the other side of that. So let's say that only 10% actually utilize the iBuyer program. The other 90% are potential sellers. And so this is what people don't understand about this. And that is, how do you prospect for good seller? It's easy to do, find buyers. You put a listing up on the internet and buyers come to it, right? Now you got buyer leads. They sell those buyer leads. How do you find out the seller that's getting ready to move? And so when they start offering these iBuyer programs, they might have 100 people say, I'm interested. 10 people take them up. You know the other 90 people are maybe thinking about selling. And so let's say they'll never make any money. It'll turn. How many times do you think they might sell those seller leads? And how much money do they make on the seller leads? And that's the point people miss when they look at iBuyers. So homes is an investment. It's an asset class. This is kind of interesting right now. You only get 64.2% are owner-occupied. We already got a lot of tenants out there, right? So people are used to renting. iBuyer, 10 years ago, not an issue. Today, you're competing with Zillow's got an iBuyer program, Redfin's got an iBuyer program, and they're all coming up with these iBuyer programs. Why? Generate seller leads. Institutional investors have new ways to package, own, and sell real property assets now. They package them up into groups, sell them. Now imagine if all of these big companies start buying all the houses and before long they own them all. Now that's a stretch, but they own them all. Now they don't have to, there's no need for an MLS. There's no need for realtors, really. The people that own the houses just can trade them amongst themselves. You might have 10 big owners in the marketplace, and if they can move portfolios from one to the other, that would change the dynamics in the real estate market. And all we're doing is thinking of scenarios that could be, right? Open door. No, they just go out and buy these properties. There's a ton of them. Fly homes. Some of them work better in other markets. Knock, right? Lots of these companies, not just a few, lots of them. Easy Knock. I wonder if they're like trademark infringement. Yeah, really. Where's my attorney? Right? Barely 2-year-old company, but they get like, millions of dollars to try this stuff. Divvy, this is another one. Buy the home and rents it back to you. Well, that's not a new idea. It's an old idea. It's been around for years, right? But now the technology is there to kind of help it along. Equity share, right? We always had equity share for years. I did it for years. That's why I bought all my real estate. I didn't have enough money to buy it by myself, so I'd get my parents and my friends, and we'd go in and we'd buy something. And then we'd trade. That's how we bought real estate. It was like we'd equity share amongst ourselves, and that's what we did. Our best investment was our car wash that we bought in 1979. You ever get to San Diego up on Adams Avenue? Stop by the Adams Avenue car wash. So now you can do equity sharing online. So imagine this. The house is too expensive, but I might be able to buy a bedroom. I'm sending my kid to college. I can't buy a condo. Maybe I can buy a bedroom. Maybe after that bedroom goes up in value, I can buy 2 bedrooms. Maybe after those go up in value, I'll have enough equity maybe to buy a house. And so the path to home ownership might be changing because of these things I talked about. Interest rates might go up and properties get more expensive. And so how do people get a foothold into real estate? Maybe through an old idea with new technologies. Roof stock, just more. 30-day money, they'll give you a money-back guarantee. Don't like the house, we'll take it back. Or you can live with roommates. So in college towns, we'll see this, right? Where we see, go online, find roommates. All of these things take place. New ways to use real estate. And there's a number of these companies, Bungalow and Common and Home Share and Star City. And what I just want you to get here is there's a lot of this. And a lot of them are not going to be successful. They're going to fail. But they're going to have an impact on the market. So the result, now what we have, new utility value. You can use the real estate for different things. And when you increase the utility value of real estate, typically what happens to the value? It goes up. In San Diego, they just created this thing where almost everybody can add a granny flat. I'm thinking, I remember when I had to search to find 2-on-1 lots. And it was like, if I could find a good 2-on-1 lot in a part of town where I could build 8 units, that was really something, right? Now, just everybody owns a house can put another unit on it. That's going to change the value right there. So, but under all of this, and you want to remember this because this is the lost conversation, under all is the data. Under all is the land. Under all is the data today, right? And the data creates more data. So if we put data, real estate information on the web, what happens? People start going and clicking, and we know if they're interested in swimming pools, we know if they're interested in kitchens, we know what pictures they look at, and so we can glean a lot of information from people based on their searches. And so that's what's happening. They're collecting data. Remember that the data lives forever. And so it's out there, when combined with other data, it becomes more valuable. And looking at a lot of data, and here's what data does for you, it lets you understand nuance, right? Differences. So if I've got a lot of data, I can start to determine small patterns and things that I wouldn't recognize if I didn't have more data. So understanding the nuance, and if you just give your data away, and you've got to look at what data, not just listing data, every bit of data you've got. If you're not trying to figure out ways to monetize or at least control your data, you're missing something. Your data may put you out of business, right? Because you're giving our data away. It's going out to all these websites. What are these websites doing with all the website traffic? Gathering consumer behavioral data. Combining that consumer behavioral data with other data to get better pictures of the consumer, to know how to sell to them, what to sell to them. Data licensing, this is another issue. A lot of people don't even understand the difference in IDX and VOW and syndicate. These are all different types of data licensing. I say, what kind of data license do you have? They say, RESO. No, that's a data standard, right? I say, what's the license? What are you allowed to do with the data? What you're allowed to do with it is different under each one of these. And so you got to say, with IDX, there's certain rules. With VOW, VALs, virtual office websites, there's certain things you can do with it. With syndication, there's certain things you can do with it. So data licensing becomes really important. So when you license your data, how careful are you with what you restrict the recipients of that data to do with your data? And I can tell you, initially when we went out and did syndication, the MLSs placed no restrictions on the data. And so as we looked at it, we started feeling guilty. We started saying, somebody's got to there needs to be restrictions on this data. Like, do you want people to be able to resell your data? Put it in a contract. Do you want people to be able to create derivative works around your data? No, put it in a contract. And nobody had thought of that. And people were just letting their data go out to these sites. They were accepting the data contracts of the entities taking their data. And remember, your data can put you out of business if you're not careful. So information is the currency of the 21st century. I say, look at your data as, this wealth in the ground. And somebody's going to figure out what to do with it, right? The dinosaur bones turn to oil. This data is going to turn into something when put under enough pressure, right? Coal turns into diamonds. Data turns into cash. You just want to make sure you're on the right side of that. So nuance, I mentioned this. What human beings are good at is nuance. That's what you offer. You offer nuance service. That's really what this is. I mean, a lot of this stuff you can do online, but guess what? It's the nuance. You told me you wanted 3 bedrooms, but I knew by looking at you really wanted 4. Right? There's some nuance here. So feed this data into algorithms to assist computers. Now, the computers, as they get more data, guess what they get better at? Nuance. And so the more data they collect, the more information, the better that it gets. And it's all of a sudden, right now, if I go online, maybe it's not showing me the right things, but after a while, it starts showing me things that are more relevant. Right? So it's starting to figure out what I like, what I don't like. As human beings, we can do that with an expression, we can tell. But the computer can't. So one of the values I think realtors continue to bring to the table is a service of nuance, determining the nuance of the buyer and the seller. Data itself, right? that one says, it's not so much about the data. It's about, when you look at a lot of data, it starts to show you patterns. It used to bother me that I spent so much money on my Lanta. You know what that is? Chalk, my wife calls it. And I spent a lot of money on that. And then I realized, by looking at Quicken, which I used at the time, that there was a correlation between the pizza that we bought and the Mylanta that I bought. And so that was, I could put this together by looking at, there's patterns. And so that's what people are doing. They're looking at these patterns and they're figuring out, this causes this causes this, right? So it's not the data, right? It's the patterns that people can see. And you've heard about the Target story, right? Target figured out that a gal was pregnant before she knew she was pregnant, even worse, before her father knew she was pregnant. Right? Because she was buying all these things that pregnant women buy. And then she stopped buying things that pregnant women stopped buying in like the third trimester, whatever, right? And so through their algorithm, they figured out, hey, this person's pregnant. Send her the coupon for diapers. And the father got it. Right? So the data tells a lot, tells the story. Now, that was the whole story. That's an interesting story, right? On Target. Look that up if you get a chance. So brokers have data. Use your strengths. We say this all the time. I think NAR is doing a great job with this with the REACH program. Use your strengths to carve out your position in the future. So as we look at what our strengths are, we got to use those strengths to carve out our position in the future. Because if we don't, somebody else will do it. I say PCM, protect, control, monetize. Protect, control, monetize. Really important. It's your data. Protect it, control it, monetize. I'm not saying don't give it to anybody. Just be careful. I talked about licensing and data. Protect it, control it, monetize it. This is Zillow's doing it. Man, Zillow has probably got the best database in the world around consumer behavior and what they're doing around your listing data. They even created something called, if you haven't seen it, a living database of all homes. I've called it for years, a property wiki. You know what a wiki is? Somebody puts up a word and everybody starts writing about it, and all of a sudden you got and people correct it. Now you got Wikipedia. So what they do is they parcel map of the United States. Each parcel is on that site, whether it's for sale or not. So every single parcel is there. If it's for sale, that's just they throw a switch that says for sale. But in the meantime, they encourage owners to go up, claim their property, add more pictures. What are they collecting? Data. More data, right? Just more information. And they are actually, and they don't hide this, they're creating a living database of all homes because consumers want this. RPR also has a great repository. Remember, for me, RPR is geodata from the RIN days, right? 20 million users, still 20 million users. But today, we've already talked about all these unique visitors, 80 million people going to the web. And if you look at their numbers, it's more than that when you look at mobile. I don't know how they measure. I just know there's a ton of people going there, way more than are going to buy real estate. And there's only 6 million transactions, 12 million sites. Searching for real estate's a game online, isn't it? It's kind of like Ancestry.com. Ancestry.com is a game. People don't realize Ancestry.com is a game, but it's a game. They use gaming strategies to get you to what? Come back. Spend time on the site. It's a game. The prize is you. Right? So you get to learn about yourself, and they get you going, and so it's a game. Real estate online is a game. But it's a game that gives data to the people that are creating the game. These monthly unique visitors, just to kind of show you the unique visitors, 40 million. That's a ton of people are going. I don't know if I trust their numbers or not. It doesn't matter. It's a lot of people. Know this, too, that massive sociological change is taking place online. If you go online every day, you'll notice this, right? You can see the change that's there, how people interact, how people don't know how to interact, how people learn how to interact with one another. So massive sociological change, it will affect the nature of relationship businesses. So this is what you got to maintain. You got to maintain the relationship. People tell you this all the time. How do you maintain the relationship? It's simple. You engage. There are new ways to engage, though. Right? Reserve judgment. People say, no, I don't like Facebook. I'm never going to use it. You don't have to like it. I hate Twitter. Good, right? But if your clients are there, you got to be where your clients are, where your customers are. So human relationships are built on engagement. You know this. That's why we go on. Realtors, we talk to everybody. We go to all the meetings. Right? Engagement. And it was pretty simple. Face-to-face, write you a card. My mom and dad used to write letters during the war, right? Back and forth. Amazing that you can maintain a relationship, like communication, every 3 weeks. But you could. So relationships are built on engagements. And so the nature of engagements changes now. And so we don't think about it this way, but nowadays there are many ways to engage. More engagements, more often. We can reestablish relationships with people we haven't seen in a while. And this is accelerating with all of these platforms. And now we can engage face-to-face still. And everybody says, that's the best. Maybe. Some people don't want to see us. Telegrams. I have a telegram in my garage. It's dated December 8th, 1941. It's from my grandparents to my parents. It says, are you okay? Telegram. Letters, a lot of letters. Telephone, fax, different ways to what? Engage people. Email, then we had email, another way to engage. Text, phone, voice, FaceTime on Facebook, all these different messengers. You know what I hate now? I get somebody, they send me something, I can't tell, where did it come from? Was it a text? Was it a Facebook message? Was it a LinkedIn message? Was it an email? Was it a phone call? Because it just popped up on my screen for a second, right? We got all these different ways to engage today. In social media, just know this, a like is an engagement. A like is an engagement. If I like something Adorna posts, nobody else might see it, but Adorna will see it. Right? So the person, when I like it, I'm communicating with someone. Right? Now, whether I like it because of the content or I like it because I like Adorna, or you don't know that yet, right? But there's some type of engagement there. And then you can comment. That's another engagement. Comment when you can. You're engaging. You reply to somebody. That's an engagement. Remember, relationships are built on engagements, and there's new ways to engage, and the more engagements build trust and confidence leads to contracts and sharing. That's a great engagement. If I share something you post, you probably really like me for that, because I just took what you posted and exposed it to my audience. That's another engagement tool. Learn these engagement tools. Utilize them every chance that you get. Retweeting something. I retweet a lot of NAR stuff. I want them to know I'm retweeting their stuff. When I see only one person retweeted it, or only one, I'm thinking, no, this is NAR. I've got to be more people doing this. Maybe if I do it, it'll help their algorithm. More people will see it, right? Social media engagement. So here's the other thing. When you're on social media, and you know this, you're going to run into a lot of people who are not always right, but never in doubt. You're not going to change their mind. I don't know how many times I start writing something, I get 2 paragraphs in, and then I think to myself, I don't want to spend all day engaging this idiot. Right? Which leads me to the next one on the village idiot, right? Who's the greater fool, the village idiot or the person who argues with the village idiot? And so I want to say something, I want to correct them. I say, I don't think so. Because they know they're right. And we're not going to change their mind. So let me use my time somewhere else. Engagements need to be frequent, anticipated, relevant, and personal. Those are the best engagements, right? Frequent, anticipated, relevant, and personal. Seth Godin. 2005, an average of 1 U.S. rock radio station went out of business a week. Every week, one went out of business. Now, why? Did we lose interest in rock and roll music? That wasn't a reason at all, right? Nope. What happened is there's a paradigm shift, a fundamental change in the way music is delivered to people, like the iPod, right? So imagine who would sit around, when I was a kid, you'd listen to music, you'd get your favorite, I love that song, but I'd have to wait 4 hours for them to play it again. Right? Who would sit around and let somebody else choose their music for them? Nobody today, probably, right? But that's the way it used to be. So there was this shift. And so all these radio stations started going out of business. They had a great product, but the delivery method changed. So just remember this idea of a paradigm, the way things, it's a model of the way things work, and that model can change. And when the model changed, some real great points from Joel Barker, your past success guarantees nothing. Doesn't matter how successful you were under the old paradigm. When the new paradigm comes, if you don't change, you're out of business. Your past success can block you. Sometimes people are so good at the way they do it, they just say, nah, I'm really good. Look at all the sales I have. Sometimes you can't see through that. When a paradigm shifts, everyone goes back to zero. We all start all over again, and don't get paralyzed in all these shifts that we're seeing. And so you got to be aware of them. You got to watch them. You got to pay attention to them. You got to see how they're going to fit into your business, but don't be afraid of them. And this is the question we ask for strategic planning. We say, what's currently impossible? And if it were possible, it fundamentally change the way you do business. Not marginally. Key. Fundamentally change the way you do business. Then ask the reverse of that, right? what's currently possible, earning commissions in real estate sales. And if it were impossible, it would fundamentally change the way you do business. That would be a paradigm shift. So remember, your wildest dream is not wild enough. In the future, here's what I think we're going to see. Just based on what now I might be totally wrong. No big deal. But here's what I see. Right? Lower commissions. Why do I think that? Because every time I turn on the television set, I'm being socialized into lower commissions. Buyer contracts. See, in my mind, if everybody can put their listings on the net, and it's easy to put your listings on the net, guess what? I think that you wouldn't need a seller side, at least for the marketing and advertising. But you still might need a buyer rep. So I think the days for, now how do we socialize that? I don't know. But that's what I see where it kind of needs to go, because this marketing listing side is becoming easier for people to do on their own. Brokers need to build repositories and networks of behavioral data. So start thinking about the data you have. As you display it, you have the underpinnings to start creating those cookie crumbs, that information about those consumers, because if you can't monetize it, somebody else can, and they might pay you for it, and that might be your new business model. I made this up for April 1st a couple of years ago. So if you go to Google, everybody goes to Google. I'm going to start going to Bing, I think. I'm tired of Google. But everybody goes to Google. And so since everybody goes to Google, what if, and they got all this white space, like this is real estate, right? And so what if they started to populate this real estate? What if when you went to Google, which you do 10, 15, 20 times a day, this popped up. Sell your home without paying a commission. Click here. If Google decided to get into real estate, they could change this thing overnight. They certainly could have all the data and all the information, and then they could start marketing. They could start putting houses up here, right? Of course, they wouldn't put it up there if they knew you weren't interested, which they would know by looking at other databases and stuff. But if you were interested, it all could start popping up here, and that would change the dynamic. And why would I bring a real estate agent in to put my property up on the web when I can just go to Zillow or Google, Freudian slip, and do it for nothing, right? And so this is not true, but it certainly could be easy enough. Somebody said, don't give them that idea. I'm sure those guys at Google are really smart. They don't need my ideas, right? So here's what I think could happen. I think the MLS data is incredibly valuable. I think it's so valuable, people haven't figured out it's that valuable. I think as a realtor, you should get paid for that data. You certainly shouldn't have to pay the MLS to take your data to send it out. That data should be able to package and be marketed to other places, and the revenue should come. You should be paid. Now, guess what? There are ways to send that. And start reading. I was reading some of Mark. Remember Mark Leswing from it? I was reading some of his stuff. You know, data is labor, and so data is really valuable, and you can start to utilize that data in new ways, and those revenue streams, the association, the MLS, you know, all in ways that you would approve. But that data is valuable. There will be systems that allow pennies to go back, or dollars to go back, or hundred to go back to the people that contribute the data. That's the way it should be. It shouldn't be that you create that, you're an army of volunteers that go out and collect all this data. Nobody pays you to collect all this data. If a deal doesn't close, you don't make any money. All that data then goes in. The MLS charges you. I love MLS. This is not a knock on MLSs, right? Is that data comes in. They have to then figure out how to disseminate that data, and you didn't get paid for it. When actually today, those technologies are starting to exist so that money could flow right back to the people that provide. As a matter of fact, if you look at Tim Berners-Lee, the guy that founded the World Wide Web, that's one of his ideas, right? Be able to provide this back to the content providers. So no matter what, just remember this. Understand that data has value. And one way for your agents, if you have agents working for you, we talk about CRMs, customer relationship management. I call it customer engagement management. Everybody needs to not own, not use, but master a CRM tool, right? Because that's a platform. Everything's going to feed into that tool for you. And so the realtor of the future is going to need to know how to use this and use it well. So remember this: speed, convenience, choice, value-added, quality service, discounts, information. This is what consumers are looking for. Too big to sink, I added question marks this time. And it's up to you to figure that out. So if you want to reach us, that's how you can reach us. John, did we get the whole thing?
Everything. Did you take a breath?
This is not a drill, by the way. Remember, we used to be, if you're in the military, you know this, you do drills and drills. I always have to tell you before, this is the drill. Which kind of takes the whole fun out of it, right? This is a drill, this is a drill. General quarters, all hands man your battle stations. This is a drill, this is a drill. I remember one time where they said, all hands man your battle stations. Whole different impact, right? So we all kind of look at this as a drill. This is a drill. We've been talking about this as friends for years. But the time has come to take action. It's no longer a drill. I appreciate the time. Thanks for inviting me and John.